They assigned Army Specialist Isabella Santos to the motor pool at Forward Operating Base, Keating in the treacherous mountains of eastern Afghanistan, handing her diagnostic equipment and hydraulic tools instead of rifles and combat gear that defined real soldiers. "You fix vehicles, not carry weapons," Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams had explained with unmistakable authority during her initial assignment briefing 6 months earlier. Mechanics stay in the rear with the maintenance equipment, well away from combat operations where infantry soldiers handle the fighting. Military regulations were absolutely explicit and non-negotiable. Personnel assigned to logistics and maintenance roles were strictly prohibited from engaging in combat operations and were specifically forbidden from carrying weapons except in extreme emergency situations that required direct authorization from command personnel at the highest levels. But at precisely 0347 hours on September 15th, when over 400 Taliban insurgents launched the most coordinated and devastating assault in FOB Keating's history using rockets, mortars, machine guns, and small arms fire that completely overwhelmed the base's defensive perimeter and threatened to overrun the entire outpost. And she found herself trapped in the motor pool with Sergeant Rodriguez's severely damaged M4 carbine rifle that had been rendered completely inoperable by shrapnel from a direct RPG blast that nearly killed them both. She didn't hesitate for even a single second or wait for authorization from anyone. She completely disassembled the destroyed weapon using nothing but hand tools, identified a catastrophic bolt carrier malfunction that had jammed the entire firing mechanism beyond conventional repair, fabricated precision replacement components using spare parts cannibalized from a disabled vehicle engine, and reassembled the rifle to full operational status in under 4 minutes, while enemy fire continuously struck the building around her and shrapnel flew through the maintenance bay. Then she calmly moved to a defensive firing position using concrete barriers and disabled vehicles for cover and laid down sustained, devastatingly accurate covering fire that prevented the complete collapse of the eastern defensive perimeter and enabled a successful counterattack that ultimately drove off the insurgent assault and saved the base from being overrun. No one had ordered her to fight. No one had trained her for infantry combat operations. No one had authorized her to carry weapons or engage enemy forces in direct combat. But when the survival of her fellow soldiers and the entire base depended on someone with the technical skills and courage to step up and defend their position against overwhelming odds, she became the unbreakable shield that held the line against catastrophic defeat. The mechanic, they said, wasn't qualified to carry a rifle, had just fought with deadly precision like she was born with one in her hands, proving conclusively that courage, skill, and dedication transcend official job descriptions when American lives hang in the balance. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories that blend extraordinary mechanical expertise with battlefield courage under impossible conditions, consider subscribing for more content that explores the heroism and technical brilliance hidden within everyday military support roles that often determine the outcome of the most critical operations. Forward Operating Base, Keating occupied one of the most strategically important but tactically vulnerable positions in the entire Afghan theater of operations, nestled precariously in the narrow Kamdesh Valley of Nuristan province's unforgiving mountain terrain, surrounded on all sides by steep ridgelines and towering peaks that provided enemy forces with virtually unlimited elevated firing positions overlooking every square meter of the American outpost below. The base had been established in October 2006 as part of a broader counterinsurgency strategy designed to interdict Taliban and al-Qaeda supply routes flowing through the region while providing a forward platform for special operations and conventional forces conducting raids, reconnaissance missions, and civil affairs operations in one of the most dangerous and politically complex areas of Afghanistan, where centuries-old tribal loyalties and religious extremism created perfect conditions for asymmetric warfare against conventional military forces. The outpost location had been selected primarily for strategic rather than tactical considerations, prioritizing intelligence-gathering capabilities and interdiction opportunities over defensive advantages in a command decision that would prove increasingly controversial as Taliban forces adapted their tactics and developed sophisticated methods for exploiting the geographic vulnerabilities that made FOB Keating extraordinarily difficult to defend against determined, well-coordinated attacks. Launched from the surrounding high ground, the base itself housed approximately 300 American soldiers from multiple units, including elements of the 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment, 10th Mountain Division, along with specialized personnel from artillery, aviation, intelligence, communications, logistics, and maintenance units who collectively maintained continuous operations in an environment where every supply delivery required dangerous helicopter transport through hostile airspace controlled by enemy forces equipped with sophisticated anti-aircraft weapons, and every patrol faced the constant possibility of complex ambush attacks coordinated from multiple directions simultaneously. The physical layout of FOB Keating reflected the challenging terrain constraints that limited construction options and defensive positioning, with buildings and facilities squeezed into the narrow valley floor in configurations that prioritized operational efficiency over optimal defensive geometry. The base perimeter followed the natural contours of the available ground, creating irregular defensive lines that were difficult to coordinate and protect effectively against multi-directional attacks launched from the commanding high ground that surrounded the facility. The motor pool complex represented the mechanical heart and operational lifeline of FOB Keating's mission capabilities, housing over 40 vehicles ranging from heavily armored mine-resistant ambush-protected MRAP vehicles and up-armored high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, HMWVs, to lighter tactical vehicles, specialized equipment carriers, and support vehicles that enabled the unit to conduct patrols, supply runs, casualty evacuations, and combat operations throughout the regions. Treacherous mountain roads and primitive trail networks where mechanical failure could easily result in personnel being stranded in hostile territory. The maintenance facility included 6 comprehensive vehicle bays equipped with hydraulic lifts, engine hoists, and specialized diagnostic equipment, along with extensive parts storage areas, welding stations, machine shop capabilities, and tool inventories required to perform everything from routine preventive maintenance to complete engine rebuilds and major armor repairs that kept complex military vehicles operational under the extreme environmental conditions and combat stresses that characterized deployment operations in mountainous Afghanistan. Army Specialist Isabella Santos had been assigned to the motor pool maintenance team for the past 6 months, her daily responsibilities encompassing the full spectrum of mechanical challenges from routine oil changes and tire rotations to complex transmission rebuilds and battle damage repairs that required innovative problem-solving and technical expertise far beyond conventional automotive maintenance procedures. At 24 years old, she possessed an associate's degree in automotive technology from Phoenix College along with multiple industry certifications, and had completed the Army's comprehensive wheeled vehicle mechanic course at Fort Lee, Virginia, graduating first in her class of 89 students with advanced specializations in diesel engine systems, automatic transmission technology, hydraulic equipment operation, and computerized diagnostic procedures. Her mechanical expertise had been developed through years of intensive hands-on experience that began during her sophomore year of high school, when she started working part-time in her Uncle Miguel's automotive repair shop in Phoenix, initially performing basic tasks like oil changes and tire installations before gradually advancing to more complex work involving engine diagnostics, transmission repairs, and electrical system troubleshooting that required sophisticated understanding of mechanical principles and problem-solving methodologies. During her high school years, Santos had demonstrated exceptional mechanical aptitude that impressed her uncle and his experienced technicians, who regularly assigned her to work on the most challenging repair problems that other mechanics couldn't solve. Her natural ability to visualize mechanical systems and understand the complex relationships between different components had enabled her to diagnose problems that stumped technicians with decades of experience, earning recognition as one of the most promising young mechanics in the Phoenix area. Following high school graduation, Santos had enrolled in the Automotive Technology program at Phoenix College, where she excelled in advanced courses covering computer-controlled engine management systems, electronic fuel injection technology, automatic transmission theory and repair, air conditioning and heating systems, and heavy equipment maintenance procedures that prepared her for professional certification as a master automotive technician with specializations in multiple vehicle systems. Her academic performance at Phoenix College had been exceptional, consistently earning the highest grades in both theoretical coursework and practical laboratory assignments while working part-time to help support her family's finances. Her instructors regularly commented on her unusual combination of theoretical knowledge and practical problem-solving ability, often assigning her to assist other students who were struggling with complex diagnostic procedures and repair techniques. The decision to enlist in the Army following college graduation had been motivated by multiple factors, including financial considerations, career advancement opportunities that civilian automotive work couldn't provide, and a genuine desire to serve her country during a time of war when skilled mechanics were desperately needed to maintain the complex equipment that enabled American forces to operate effectively in harsh environments like Afghanistan and Iraq, where vehicle failures could have life-or-death consequences. The Army's wheeled vehicle mechanic course at Fort Lee had provided Santos with specialized training in military vehicle systems that differed significantly from civilian automotive technology in fundamental ways that required completely new approaches to maintenance and repair procedures. Military vehicles incorporated sophisticated armor protection systems, advanced communication and navigation equipment, weapon mounting systems, and specialized components designed to operate under combat conditions that civilian vehicles never experienced. Her training at Fort Lee had included extensive work on mine-resistant ambush-protected (MRAP) vehicles that were specifically designed to protect crews from improvised explosive device (IED) attacks and small arms fire. High-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles (HMWVs) configured for various combat roles from personnel transport to weapons platforms, and numerous support vehicles including fuel tankers, water trucks, and cargo carriers that formed the logistical backbone of military operations in remote locations. The technical complexity of military vehicle systems required understanding of hydraulic systems operating at pressures exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch, computerized diagnostic networks that monitored hundreds of individual components simultaneously, armor integration that affected weight distribution and mechanical stress patterns, and specialized maintenance procedures that had to be performed while wearing full combat equipment under potentially hostile conditions. Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams supervised the motor pool maintenance operations with the calm authority that characterized 15 years of distinguished Army mechanical experience spanning multiple combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, where he had learned through bitter experience that reliable vehicles often meant the difference between successful missions and catastrophic failures that could cost lives, destroy expensive equipment, and compromise critical operations. His extensive deployment experience had taught him to value mechanics who could solve complex problems creatively using available resources, work effectively under extreme pressure and dangerous conditions, and maintain positive attitudes despite the challenging living conditions and constant stress that characterized forward operating base assignments in active combat zones where enemy attacks were regular occurrences rather than exceptional events. Santos, your primary job here is maintaining our vehicles and keeping them operationally ready for mission requirements, Williams had emphasized during her comprehensive assignment briefing conducted on her first day at FOB Keating. You're not infantry, you're not assigned to combat operations, and you don't carry weapons except for the basic self-defense armament that all personnel maintain. Mechanics work in the motor pool maintaining equipment, not on the front lines engaging enemy forces in direct combat. His instructions reflected fundamental Army doctrine that assigned personnel to specific roles based on their military occupational specialty, MOS, and strictly restricted them to duties within their designated areas of expertise and responsibility. The clear distinction between combat and support roles was absolutely fundamental to military organizational structure, with comprehensive regulations governing who could be assigned to direct combat operations and under precisely what circumstances support personnel could engage enemy forces. These regulations were designed to ensure that specialized personnel like mechanics, medics, communication specialists, and logistics coordinators remained available to perform their critical support functions rather than being diverted to combat duties that could be performed by infantry personnel specifically trained for direct engagement with enemy forces. Santos understood and accepted the restrictions placed on her role, but had always maintained a strong personal interest in weapons systems and combat tactics, spending considerable amounts of her limited off-duty time studying field manuals, observing infantry training exercises when her maintenance duties permitted, and learning about weapon maintenance and marksmanship from soldiers who were willing to share their knowledge with someone genuinely interested in understanding combat operations. Her mechanical background had provided her with a thorough understanding of how weapons functioned from an engineering perspective, since firearms were essentially sophisticated mechanical devices that operated according to the same fundamental principles as automotive engines, hydraulic systems, and other mechanical equipment she worked with on a daily basis. The gas-operated cycling systems in military rifles, for example, functioned using principles nearly identical to internal combustion engines, while recoil mechanisms operated using hydraulic and spring systems similar to automotive suspension components. Her personal weapons training had been limited to the basic marksmanship instruction and self-defense courses required for all Army personnel regardless of their assigned military occupational specialty. But her mechanical knowledge had enabled her to understand weapon systems far more thoroughly than many soldiers who carried them regularly, but possessed little understanding of their internal mechanisms, maintenance requirements, or troubleshooting procedures for addressing malfunctions under field conditions. She had often wondered how her systematic problem-solving skills and extensive mechanical expertise might translate to weapons maintenance and combat operations. Though her assigned role as a vehicle mechanic provided no official opportunities to explore these interests or apply her technical knowledge to weapon systems that required the same analytical approach and hands-on expertise that characterized her vehicle maintenance work. The motor pool at FOB Keating operated on a demanding continuous schedule that reflected the intense operational tempo characterizing combat operations in one of Afghanistan's most dangerous regions, where vehicles were constantly being damaged by improvised explosive devices, IEDs, direct and indirect enemy fire, harsh environmental conditions, and the punishing demands of operating heavy equipment on primitive mountain roads that had never been designed for military vehicle traffic. Santos typically worked 12 to 14-hour shifts that began before dawn and continued well into the evening hours, maintaining and repairing vehicles that would be needed for the next day's patrol operations, supply runs, and combat missions that kept the base supplied and enabled continuous operations against enemy forces operating throughout the region. Her workload included both scheduled preventive maintenance according to technical manual specifications and emergency repairs necessitated by combat damage or mechanical failures that occurred during operations. Her assigned workstation in the motor pool was equipped with state-of-the-art computerized diagnostic equipment capable of interfacing with the sophisticated electronic systems that controlled modern military vehicles, along with comprehensive inventories of specialized tools designed specifically for working on armored vehicles, and extensive part storage areas that enabled her to repair almost any mechanical problem that didn't require major components to be shipped from rear area supply depots located hundreds of miles away. The technical complexity of modern military vehicles demanded extensive knowledge of computer-controlled systems, advanced hydraulic technology, sophisticated electrical networks, and specialized maintenance procedures that required constant learning and adaptation to stay current with new systems, upgrade packages, and technical improvements that were continuously being developed to improve vehicle capabilities and crew protection against evolving enemy threats. The work environment at FOB Keating was characterized by constant awareness of security threats and the ever-present possibility of enemy attacks, with all personnel required to carry basic combat equipment, including body armor, helmets, and personal weapons while remaining continuously prepared for hostile actions that could occur without warning at any time of day or night. The base's tactically vulnerable location meant that rocket and mortar attacks were regular occurrences that personnel had learned to work through, while more serious coordinated assault attempts happened several times per year and required all available personnel to contribute to the base's defense regardless of their primary job assignments or official combat designations. Santos had experienced numerous rocket and mortar attacks during her 6 months at FOB Keating, gradually learning to distinguish between different types of incoming ordnance based on their distinctive sounds and respond appropriately to various threat levels according to established base defense procedures. The attacks had become routine enough that most personnel continued working unless direct hits occurred near their immediate locations, though everyone remained constantly alert for more serious assault attempts that could threaten the base's survival and require active participation in defensive operations. Intelligence reports regularly indicated that Taliban forces operating throughout the Kamdesh district were planning major attacks on coalition bases, using the region's complex mountain terrain to establish observation posts and coordinate sophisticated multi-directional assaults that had proven effective against several smaller outposts that had been overrun or abandoned due to unsustainable casualty rates and logistical challenges. The Taliban forces operating in the region had developed increasingly sophisticated tactics for attacking coalition bases over the years of conflict, learning to coordinate large numbers of fighters equipped with rockets, mortars, machine guns, and small arms in complex operations that exploited the mountainous terrain to achieve tactical advantages that offset American technological superiority and firepower advantages. September 15th began as what appeared to be a completely routine day in the motor pool, with Santos conducting scheduled preventive maintenance procedures on 3 MRAP vehicles that had been damaged during the previous week's patrol operations in areas where IED attacks and small arms ambushes were regular occurrences that damaged vehicles even when crews escaped without serious injuries. The damaged vehicles required comprehensive repairs, including replacement of ballistic glass panels that had been cracked by small arms fire, repair of hydraulic systems that had been damaged by IED explosions that had thrown vehicles off roadways, and extensive engine work to address problems caused by the fine sand and dust that infiltrated every mechanical system despite sophisticated filtration equipment designed to protect critical components from environmental contamination. Her morning maintenance routine included systematic inspection of engine oil levels and condition, comprehensive examination of armor plate integrity and mounting systems, testing of communication and navigation equipment that crews depended on for coordination with base operations, and verification that all weapon mounting systems were properly secured and functional according to technical manual specifications that governed every aspect of vehicle operation and maintenance. The work was methodical, demanding, and absolutely critical, requiring constant attention to detail and absolute precision in following technical procedures that had been developed through years of combat experience and engineering analysis conducted by teams of experts who understood that a single overlooked problem could result in catastrophic vehicle breakdown during combat operations, potentially exposing crews to enemy fire or stranding them in hostile territory where rescue operations would be extremely dangerous and costly. At precisely 0347 hours, while Santos was working on a complex transmission problem in MRAP vehicle number 7 that required complete disassembly of the transfer case to access damaged components, FOB Keating came under the most intense, coordinated, and devastating enemy attack in the base's operational history. Taliban forces had secretly positioned approximately 400 experienced fighters in carefully prepared positions throughout the mountains surrounding the base, equipped with 107mm rockets, 82mm mortar systems, heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and small arms that enabled them to deliver overwhelming firepower from multiple directions simultaneously while remaining concealed in terrain that provided excellent cover and concealment. The massive attack began with a coordinated barrage of over 50 107mm rockets and dozens of 82mm mortar rounds that struck key facilities throughout the base with devastating accuracy, targeting the command post, ammunition storage areas, personnel living quarters, defensive weapon positions, and critical infrastructure including the communications center and medical facility that were essential for coordinating defensive operations and treating casualties. The initial bombardment was carefully planned and expertly executed, designed to destroy the base's command and control capabilities while suppressing defensive weapons that could interfere with the main ground assault that would follow immediately after the preparatory fires achieved their intended effects. The enemy forces had conducted months of surveillance and reconnaissance to identify critical vulnerabilities in the base's defensive layout and developed detailed attack plans that maximized their chances of achieving complete success. Within minutes of the devastating initial rocket and mortar attack, hundreds of enemy fighters began advancing on the base perimeter from 3 different directions simultaneously. Using disciplined small-unit tactics and coordinated fire and movement techniques to suppress defensive positions, while assault teams equipped with Bangalore torpedoes and explosive charges attempted to breach the perimeter barriers and defensive obstacles that protected the base's interior areas. The motor pool, located near the strategically important eastern perimeter of the base where the terrain offered the best approaches for enemy ground assault forces, immediately came under intense and concentrated fire as Taliban forces attempted to destroy the vehicles that would be absolutely essential for evacuation operations or counterattack missions that could disrupt their assault plans and enable effective American resistance to the coordinated attack. Multiple rocket-propelled grenade, RPG, rounds and concentrated small arms fire struck the motor pool, building repeatedly within the first few minutes of the ground assault, sending deadly steel shrapnel and concrete debris flying throughout the maintenance bays, where Santos and 2 other mechanics were working on critical vehicle repairs that were essential for the next day's planned operations. The first RPG round struck the building's eastern wall with tremendous force just 15 feet from Santos's working position. The massive explosion sending razor-sharp steel fragments and chunks of concrete debris flying throughout the maintenance bay at velocities that could easily kill or seriously wound anyone in the area. One particularly large piece of shrapnel struck Sergeant Rodriguez's M4 carbine rifle that was positioned on a nearby workbench, completely destroying the weapon's bolt carrier group and rendering it completely inoperable just as the NCO responsible for motor pool security needed it most for defending the facility against the advancing enemy assault forces. "My rifle's completely jammed," Sergeant Rodriguez shouted over the deafening sound of incoming enemy fire that was steadily increasing in intensity as more Taliban fighters joined the assault. "The bolt's totally stuck and I can't clear the malfunction." His backup weapon had been completely destroyed when shrapnel from the same explosion struck his equipment locker, leaving him defenseless in a rapidly developing combat situation that required immediate armed response to prevent enemy forces from overrunning the motor pool and gaining access to the base's interior areas. Santos immediately grabbed the severely damaged rifle and began performing rapid field stripping procedures to identify the specific malfunction and determine whether the weapon could be repaired using available tools and materials, applying the same systematic diagnostic approach she used for troubleshooting complex vehicle problems to analyze the mechanical failure that had rendered the rifle inoperable. Her initial inspection revealed that the bolt carrier group had been severely damaged by multiple shrapnel impacts, with steel fragments embedded deeply in the bolt extension that prevented the weapon from cycling properly, while additional damage to the gas system had partially blocked the gas tube that was essential for the rifle's semi-automatic operation under combat conditions. "The bolt's completely fouled with shrapnel fragments," she reported while carefully examining the damaged components and assessing repair options. "The extraction mechanism is jammed solid and the gas system is partially blocked by debris. This is going to require major repair work using improvised techniques." Her assessment indicated that conventional field stripping and cleaning procedures would be completely inadequate to restore the weapon to operational condition. Drawing upon techniques she had developed for fabricating replacement parts for damaged vehicles when proper spare parts were unavailable, Santos quickly identified various components in the motor pool that could potentially be modified to repair the rifle's damaged bolt mechanism using available tools and materials. A damaged alternator from a disabled Humvee contained steel components that could be carefully machined to replace the destroyed bolt extension, while heavy-duty springs from hydraulic system components could substitute for damaged firing pin springs and other critical internal components. Working with hand tools and a portable grinding wheel that was normally used for modifying vehicle parts during complex repairs, she began fabricating precision replacement components for the rifle's bolt assembly with the same attention to detail and mechanical precision that characterized her vehicle maintenance work. Her extensive mechanical expertise enabled her to understand the critical tolerances and specifications required for reliable weapon operation, knowledge that proved absolutely essential for creating components that would function safely and reliably under intense combat conditions. The complex repair process required complete disassembly of the rifle's upper receiver assembly, careful extraction of embedded shrapnel fragments using dental picks and other precision tools, modification of improvised replacement components to exact specifications using measurement tools and mechanical expertise, and meticulous reassembly according to technical specifications that ensured safe and reliable operation under the stress of continuous combat firing. The demanding repair work had to be performed while under increasingly intense enemy fire, with automatic weapons rounds and RPG explosions striking the building continuously as Taliban assault forces advanced closer to the motor pool's defensive perimeter and concentrated their fire on the building that housed critical vehicles and equipment. "How much more time do you need?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked anxiously, continuously monitoring the tactical situation developing around the motor pool while Santos worked on his damaged weapon. "The eastern perimeter positions are starting to collapse, and we desperately need to establish effective defensive fire immediately." The obvious urgency in his voice reflected the critical nature of the tactical situation that was rapidly developing as enemy forces advanced toward their position. "Almost finished with the bolt assembly," Santos replied calmly, carefully installing the fabricated bolt extension and testing the weapon's cycling action to ensure proper mechanical operation. "Just need to verify headspace and timing specifications to ensure safe firing characteristics." Her systematic approach to the repair process reflected mechanical discipline that prioritized safety and reliability over speed, even under the extreme pressure of combat conditions where time was absolutely critical. After completing the rebuilt bolt mechanism and conducting comprehensive function testing to verify proper operation, Santos loaded a 30-round magazine and carefully chambered a round to confirm that the weapon was ready for immediate combat use. The successful repair had required less than 4 minutes of intense work under fire, demonstrating exceptional mechanical skills and problem-solving ability that few soldiers possessed, and that proved absolutely critical under extreme pressure. "Weapons ready for action," she announced, handing the expertly repaired rifle to Sergeant Rodriguez. However, as she carefully surveyed the rapidly deteriorating tactical situation around the motor pool, she immediately realized that a single rifle would not provide adequate firepower to defend the facility against the increasing numbers of enemy fighters who were advancing steadily toward their position using effective small unit tactics. The eastern perimeter defensive positions had been heavily damaged or destroyed by the intensive initial rocket and mortar attack, and several soldiers manning those positions had been seriously wounded by shrapnel and small arms fire that prevented them from maintaining the effective defensive fire that was essential for preventing enemy penetration of the base's outer defensive perimeter. Enemy fighters were systematically taking advantage of the suppressed and damaged defensive positions to advance closer to the base perimeter in organized assault formations, moving from cover to cover while maintaining suppressive fire that kept defending forces pinned down and unable to effectively engage the advancing assault teams that threatened to overrun critical facilities, including the motor pool. "Rodriguez, there are too many enemy fighters advancing for one rifle to handle effectively," Santos observed, watching Taliban assault teams move between improvised cover positions as they systematically advanced toward the motor pool using fire and movement tactics that demonstrated extensive training and combat experience. "We need significantly more firepower to hold this position against a coordinated assault." Her tactical assessment reflected understanding of the defensive situation that exceeded her official role as a vehicle mechanic. Sergeant Rodriguez recognized the accuracy of her tactical assessment, but faced the harsh reality that no additional personnel were available to reinforce the motor pool's defense, since every available soldier on the base was already engaged in defending their assigned positions against the massive coordinated attack that was threatening to overwhelm the entire defensive perimeter simultaneously. "Santos, you're absolutely not supposed to be engaged in direct combat operations, but we desperately need every available weapon if we're going to successfully hold this critical position," Rodriguez acknowledged, his statement reflecting the desperate nature of the tactical situation that required maximum utilization of all available personnel to contribute to the base's defense regardless of their official job assignments or combat training status. Santos made a decision that prioritized mission accomplishment and the survival of her fellow soldiers over strict adherence to regulations that restricted her role to vehicle maintenance and prohibited her from engaging in direct combat operations except under the most extreme emergency circumstances. "Give me that rifle and extra ammunition," she said firmly. "I'll take the eastern firing position and provide sustained covering fire while you coordinate with Base Defense Command and call for additional support." Her request clearly violated Army regulations that restricted mechanics to support roles and specifically prohibited them from engaging in direct combat, except in extreme emergency situations that required official authorization. However, the current tactical situation clearly constituted exactly the type of life-threatening emergency that justified immediate deviation from normal role restrictions in favor of survival requirements and mission accomplishment. Rodriguez handed her the expertly repaired rifle along with 6 additional 30-round magazines and 2 fragmentation grenades. Recognizing that the tactical situation required absolute maximum utilization of available personnel and weapons regardless of their official job assignments or normal role restrictions. "Be extremely careful, Santos. This isn't vehicle maintenance work." His words acknowledged both the extreme danger of the combat situation and his confidence in her demonstrated abilities and judgment under pressure. Santos moved quickly to an effective defensive position near the eastern wall of the motor pool building, using concrete barriers and disabled vehicle hulks to create solid cover while establishing clear fields of fire that covered the most likely enemy approach routes based on terrain analysis and observation of enemy movement patterns. Her mechanical knowledge proved immediately valuable for understanding how to use vehicle chassis and heavy equipment as improvised defensive positions that provided protection while enabling effective engagement of advancing enemy forces. From her carefully selected firing position, she could observe enemy fighters advancing in small coordinated groups using available terrain features and destroyed equipment for concealment, their disciplined movement patterns clearly indicating extensive tactical training and operational experience that characterized veteran insurgent forces rather than inexperienced fighters. The Taliban assault teams were employing sophisticated small unit tactics that enabled them to advance systematically while minimizing their exposure to defensive fire from the base's remaining operational weapon positions. Santos engaged the closest enemy fighters with carefully aimed single shots that demonstrated marksmanship skills developed during her basic military training, but refined through mechanical understanding of how weapons functioned and the importance of proper sight alignment, breathing control, and trigger squeeze for achieving maximum accuracy under combat conditions. Her first carefully aimed shots struck 2 enemy fighters who had advanced to within 150 meters of the motor pool perimeter, immediately causing the remaining members of their assault team to seek better cover and reassess their approach route, while attempting to identify and suppress the defensive position that was engaging them with unexpectedly accurate and effective fire. Continuing to engage targets systematically as they presented themselves, Santos maintained steady, accurate, and disciplined fire that prevented enemy assault forces from advancing closer to the motor pool, while carefully conserving ammunition through precise target selection and shot placement that maximized the effectiveness of each round fired. Her mechanical understanding of the rifle's operation enabled her to maintain optimal weapon functionality despite continuous firing that could easily cause overheating problems and mechanical malfunctions that would render the weapon inoperable. Santos' outstanding shooting. Sergeant Rodriguez called from his coordination position where he was maintaining radio contact with base defense operations. "You're keeping them effectively pinned down on the eastern approach route." His enthusiastic encouragement reflected recognition that her sustained defensive fire was proving absolutely critical to holding the motor pool position despite her complete lack of official combat training or infantry experience. The intense engagement continued for over an hour as enemy assault forces repeatedly attempted to advance toward the motor pool using increasingly sophisticated tactics, while Santos and Rodriguez maintained effective defensive fire that prevented penetration of their position and forced enemy forces to commit additional resources to what should have been a relatively easy objective to capture. Her sustained, accurate shooting forced enemy fighters to seek increasingly better cover and coordinate more complex approach tactics that significantly slowed their advance and diverted resources from other assault objectives. While her mechanical expertise enabled her to maintain weapon functionality and ammunition conservation that extended her ability to provide effective defensive fire throughout the prolonged engagement. Additional defensive positions throughout FOB Keating gradually began to reorganize and re-establish effective defensive fire as the initial shock and confusion of the surprise attack wore off, and surviving personnel recovered from the devastating preparatory bombardment that had temporarily disrupted the base's defensive coordination and communication capabilities. Artillery support from nearby coalition bases began arriving on target with increasing accuracy and effectiveness, disrupting enemy assault formations and forcing them to disperse into smaller groups to avoid concentrated indirect fire that was being adjusted based on radio reports from defensive positions that maintained contact with supporting fire direction centers. The combination of increasingly effective defensive fire from positions like the motor pool and accurate artillery support that was systematically targeting enemy assault formations gradually shifted the tactical momentum against the attacking Taliban forces, forcing them to transition from aggressive assault operations to defensive positions as American forces began organizing counterattack operations designed to drive enemy forces away from the base perimeter and re-establish control of the surrounding terrain. Santos continued to provide accurate and effective defensive fire throughout the extended engagement, her mechanical skills proving invaluable for maintaining weapon function under continuous use, while her developing tactical instincts enabled increasingly effective target engagement despite her complete lack of formal combat training or infantry experience. Her contribution to the base's successful defense significantly exceeded all expectations for personnel assigned to support roles and demonstrated capabilities that had been completely unrecognized through her official vehicle maintenance assignments. When the massive coordinated attack finally ended after nearly 3 hours of intense fighting that had tested every aspect of the base's defensive capabilities, enemy forces had been systematically driven back from the base perimeter with significant casualties while completely failing to achieve their primary objective of overrunning FOB Keating and destroying American capabilities in the region. The successful defense had required extraordinary contributions from every available person on the base regardless of their official role, assigned responsibilities, or designated combat status, demonstrating the critical importance of adaptive leadership and maximum utilization of available personnel when facing overwhelming enemy forces in tactically disadvantageous situations. Colonel James Patterson, the base commander, personally conducted comprehensive post-action interviews with key personnel and visited every defensive position during his detailed assessment of the attack and the factors that had contributed to the successful defense against overwhelming odds. His visit to the motor pool included specific recognition of the personnel who had contributed significantly to the defense despite not being officially assigned to combat roles. Specialist Santos, your actions today went far beyond your assigned duties and contributed significantly to our successful defense against a determined enemy assault, Colonel Patterson told her during his personal visit to acknowledge her exceptional performance. Your mechanical skills in repairing damaged weapons and your effective defensive fire were observed by multiple personnel and documented in their sworn statements. Her defensive actions during the attack had been witnessed by numerous personnel throughout the base who provided detailed testimony about the accuracy and effectiveness of her fire, along with her exceptional mechanical skills in repairing damaged weapons under intense combat conditions. The combination of technical expertise and combat effectiveness demonstrated capabilities that clearly exceeded her current assignment limitations and warranted immediate recognition and appropriate utilization. Sir, I simply did what needed to be done under the circumstances, Santos replied with characteristic humility. The tactical situation required everyone to contribute to the maximum extent possible, regardless of their normal job assignments. Her modest response reflected fundamental military values that emphasized mission accomplishment and unit cohesion over individual recognition, while acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances that had required her active participation in combat operations. Colonel Patterson's comprehensive investigation of the attack included detailed interviews with all personnel who had observed Santos's actions, revealing that her defensive fire had been absolutely critical to preventing enemy penetration of the eastern perimeter, and that her mechanical skills in repairing damaged weapons had enabled continued resistance that might not have been possible without her technical expertise and initiative. Specialist Santos, your mechanical skills and combat effectiveness have been thoroughly documented in my official report to higher headquarters, the colonel informed her. Your contributions today reflect the highest traditions of Army service and demonstrate exceptional capabilities that warrant official recognition and appropriate future utilization of your talents. His words clearly indicated that her actions would receive formal recognition through military awards and decorations, while opening opportunities for career advancement that would better utilize her demonstrated capabilities. The aftermath of the successful defense prompted a comprehensive review of base defense procedures and personnel utilization policies that recognized the tremendous value of technical specialists who could contribute effectively to combat operations when circumstances required their participation in roles beyond their primary assignments. Santos's actions became a detailed case study in adaptive leadership and the critical importance of utilizing available personnel effectively regardless of their designated primary job assignments. Within 2 weeks of the attack, Santos received official orders reassigning her to a newly created position that combined her exceptional mechanical expertise with tactical responsibilities, enabling her to train other soldiers in advanced weapons maintenance while contributing to combat operations when circumstances required her participation. The innovative assignment recognized her demonstrated capabilities while maximizing organizational benefit from her unique combination of technical skills and proven combat effectiveness. 6 months later, during the annual Veterans Day ceremony conducted at FOB Keating, Colonel Patterson announced that the base would be conducting a special memorial flyover in honor of personnel who had contributed significantly to the base's successful defense during the September attack that had threatened to destroy American capabilities in the region. This flyover specifically recognizes soldiers who went above and beyond their assigned duties to ensure our survival, Colonel Patterson announced during the formal ceremony attended by the entire base population. Their actions represent the finest traditions of adaptive leadership and personal courage under the most extreme conditions. Staff Sergeant Santos, recently promoted in official recognition of her exceptional performance and leadership potential, stood at attention with other honored personnel as 4 F-16 Fighting Falcons conducted a precision formation flyover of the base in tribute to the defenders who had saved FOB Keating from being overrun. The flight leader specifically requested that this flyover be conducted in honor of Staff Sergeant Santos and other support personnel who became combat defenders when the situation demanded their participation, Colonel Patterson announced. Their actions represent the finest traditions of Army service and demonstrate the critical importance of recognizing and utilizing all available capabilities when facing determined enemies. Today, Master Sergeant Isabella Santos serves as the senior mechanical instructor at the Army's prestigious Combat Vehicle Maintenance School at Fort Lee, Virginia, where she trains the next generation of military mechanics in advanced repair techniques, while emphasizing the critical importance of understanding weapons systems and tactical considerations that could prove essential during combat deployments to hostile environments. Her comprehensive curriculum includes detailed case studies from FOB Keating that demonstrate how technical expertise and problem-solving abilities can contribute to mission success in completely unexpected ways, while her teaching methodology emphasizes the development of adaptability and innovation that enable mechanics to contribute effectively beyond their primary assignments when circumstances require maximum utilization of available capabilities. Her inspiring story has become an integral part of Army leadership training programs throughout the service, illustrating the critical importance of recognizing competence regardless of official assignments and the tremendous value of personnel who are willing to risk personal consequences to provide necessary capabilities when mission success depends on maximum utilization of all available resources and talents. The mechanic they said wasn't qualified to carry a rifle had proven conclusively that courage, skill, dedication, and technical expertise transcend official job descriptions when American lives hang in the balance. Sometimes the most important contributions to mission success come from people who apply their specialized expertise in completely unexpected ways when circumstances demand immediate action beyond their assigned roles, demonstrating that true military effectiveness emerges when personnel are empowered and trusted to utilize all their capabilities in service of mission accomplishment and the protection of their fellow soldiers.